Hi guys, and welcome to the Watch Lobby. In today's video, we'll be doing something a little different. While I had both of these Datejusts on hand, I figured it would be the perfect opportunity to use them as a comparison for any of you out there trying to decide what Datejust configuration would suit you better. Obviously, these aren't the only two configurations, but we'll cover off a few of the main components that you'll need to decide on. Those being, what metal configuration you want, what bracelet style you want, what bezel style you want. This won't be an in-depth review of these pieces by any means. I've got separate in-depth reviews of each of these pieces, which I'll link in the description down below. Feel free to check those out as well if you need some further information on either of these Datejusts. Both of these pieces are the same technically, so we'll go over the pros and cons of each aesthetically. Throughout the video, I'll give you an objective and subjective opinion, and by the end, I hope it'll help you decide what Datejust configuration suits you best. Now, let's get started. These are known as the Datejust 41, along with all of these. Measurements come in identical, but there are a couple of things to note depending on the configuration you like. Let's quickly go over the measurements. A case diameter of 40.5mm, 42.2mm including the crown, a lug to lug of 46.8, a thickness of 11.6, and a lug width of 20mm. Now, like I said, there are a couple of things that are different depending on the configuration you decide to go with. Let's start with the weight. An Oyster steel Datejust with all links weigh in at 132 grams, whereas the two-tone variant we have here with all links weighs in at 151 grams. I know it doesn't sound like much, but on wrist, people's preferences are extremely different. I personally don't mind a bit of heft on the wrist, all within reason. But if you're a person that likes to keep the weight on their timepieces down, then maybe look at staying clear of the two-tone variants. Another thing to note is depending on your bracelet choice, the lug-to-lug measurement does change. The lug-to-lug measurement of 46.6mm that we went over is correct when taking nothing else into consideration, and it is also correct when the Datejust is on a Jubilee bracelet. However, getting the Datejust with an Oyster bracelet does push the lug-to-lug measurements out by a few millimeters to 50.4mm. Some of you may be asking why. So, for the Oyster bracelet, the end links itself has a solid fixed center section which protrude out past the furthest extremity of the lugs. About 1.9mm on each side, adding a total of 3.8mm to the lug-to-lug measurement. On wrist, any Datejust 41 on Oyster will sit a little bit wider. Again, something else you may want to consider depending on your wrist size. I've been able to wear both these variants comfortably and they don't look out of place on my roughly 7-inch wrist. However, those with smaller wrists may potentially find the Datejust 41 on Oyster might wear a bit bigger than preferred. On a Jubilee bracelet, the end link and first link are fully articulated, so the extremity of the lugs are indeed the widest point of the case. While we're talking about bracelets, let's talk about Oyster versus Jubilee. For the most part, I would say make your selection on personal preference. However, before making that decision, here's something you may want to know. As we know, center links on all Datejust bracelets are finished in high polish, with the design of the Oyster bracelet presenting itself with larger, flatter surface areas, which in fact do lend itself to be more susceptible to visible hairline scratches. Now, I say visible hairline scratches because the center links of the Jubilee bracelet will actually also get hairline scratches. However, due to their design, with the 3 smaller rounded off center links, they will hide those scratches far better than the Oyster will. I think this makes it a hard decision. A bit of a catch-22 in my opinion. My opinion is the Oyster bracelet is a bit more toned down. Might be suited better to someone that wants a Datejust to wear daily but still go under the radar. but the scratch magnet center links really pull it away from the daily wearer realm. Whereas I think the Jubilee is more dressed up and in your face when compared to the Oyster. But it does hide those hairline scratches a lot better, so wearing it daily will be less of an issue. If you don't mind your piece being slightly more dressed up, I would say opt for the Jubilee option. It doesn't matter in two-tone or Oyster steel, I just like knowing that a Jubilee can hide daily wear use a lot better. Something important but not nearly as measurable in this instance is comfort. At this price point, Rolex make possibly the most comfortable bracelets in the game. But I would say the Jubilee is slightly more comfortable just because of the smaller links conforming to every odd shape or curve to any wearer's wrist. Let me just say though, this wouldn't be a deciding factor for me as they are both so comfortable. I'd be more inclined to make the decision on scratch factor than comfort. As we're talking about scratch factor, I will point out that smooth bezels will also show hairline scratches more prominently than a fluted bezel. Keeping in mind that the smooth bezel are also finished in a high polish. The end result for me is really simple, and I'll be looking at this from a wearer's perspective, not for a watch that will be a save queen. Essentially, the Datejust Oyster steel with smooth bezel and Oyster bracelet has all the design elements to make it the perfect under the radar daily wearer. However, with the high polished finishing on the center links and bezel, it really dampens the daily wear aspect for me. I personally think daily wearing this variant long term will leave you with a watch completely full of hairline scratches. Sure, you can get it refinished, but that's something I'd advise against. Now the variant with a Jubilee bracelet and fluted bezel. In whatever metal you select, be it Oyster steel or two-tone, does present as a slightly dressier piece, but the Jubilee and fluted bezel will definitely hide hairline scratches better in the long term. If I were to select the perfect Datejust variant for myself, it would be in all Oyster steel with a Jubilee bracelet and white gold fluted bezel. With either this Wimbledon dial, also known as a slate dial, or the bright blue dial that everyone loves. Essentially, the reference 126334. To me, this reference presents the perfect middle ground of subtle and in your face, being in all Oyster steel with a bit of bling with the fluted bezel and Jubilee bracelet. And the biggest selling point for me being the way both the bezel and Jubilee bracelet hides hairline scratches. Let me know down below what would be your go-to Datejust configuration for a daily wearer. With all that said, we're at the end of another video. I really hope this video helped you in making the right choice for your Datejust configuration. If you liked this video, it would mean a lot if you could like, comment and subscribe. And like always, thank you for watching and stay safe.